Still figuring this thing out. I don't know.
Hello, and welcome to Miracle Mom and Mike.
That's Mom, Miracle Mom. And I'm Michael.
And I need to give a shout out to Michelle and Bill and Vanessa and Rick and John and Bill and Cheryl. And my internet BFF, Donna Collins in Rhode Island. Okay, go.
Wow. Awesome. Well, it looks like, I don't know who it is, but it looks like we have two people watching. That could be me and you. Might be the only ones. There were three for a split second and then two. Still figuring out the live stream thing, but we're gonna, like, this is obviously live right now, but this is the end of it.
You know, we also have a comment.
I saw that.
That woman, Jamie Moy, is my former boss. She was the director of nursing at St. Mary's Home in St. Paul when I worked there.
Wow.
The best director of nursing I have ever worked with.
Oh, you're just saying that. You're just saying nice. That. Sorry to cut you off. You're just saying that because you're on the air. Just kidding.
No. I would tell her that to her face every day when we worked. So that's true. But that was nice.
Nice. Oh, it looks like. Oh, Phil just made a comment. All right, so this is working. This is the test here is working out because I wanted to try it with potentially some viewers, and so Phil already commented. He saw my T-shirt. The people of the United States of America, right? The government fully pays for that, so it's mine. Free advertising for my broadcasting service. All right. Well. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to test out this one line. You know, we'll figure out our system here as we move along. But for anybody who's just tuning in, that's Miracle Mom about 20 years ago. On the back of the picture, it has the date, Mom. It's 2000. So it's coming up this summer will be 20 years since the family reunion. That's your. All right, where are you in the lineup? Are you the youngest? No, Cheryl's the youngest?
Cheryl's the youngest. And then, well, let me start at the top. Bill is the oldest, and then Dave.
Oh, okay.
Then John, then me. I was the first girl.
Got it.
And then Cheryl.
Okay. Well, there's some names out there now. That's one thing I wanted to talk about. We already mentioned names in one of the earlier episodes, but your siblings have all been named, and my brother has been named, and my sister. So I want to talk about kind of the format for the show. This is behind the scenes. This is not for those of you listening. If you still are, this is pretty much a sneak peek at us developing what this saying people's names. I don't mean about like first names, but I mean when we're talking about, say, so I send you an article or something to read, and it's from a source, and I want to avoid saying the names of the people who wrote the article, or if it's a video link, or the names of the networks or the channels or the shows. I want to avoid saying those proper names.
Why?
Because I don't want to try it. And it's going to be unavoidable at times, and I don't mind saying it, but I want to test that out because the subject matter and the content is far more important than who's saying it. And some people are so triggered and so turned off by certain sources. Unfortunately,
you're trying to minimize the bias.
Exactly, because I use sources from all sides. Like I try to read as much as possible from all perspectives to boil things down. Because one of my life mottos is if you can't state both sides of a position, then you should never be listened to. Like,
well, that's what I was talking.
And so I want to attempt with this format. I'm playing with the lighting system here because I have,
Are you in the closet?
I have high-tech lights. This is a music stand light. You'll see the video. I have a little light that my kids use for their music stands that's
Oh,
getting a better lighting on my face so I could do the
Mike is in the closet.
Actually, I'm in front of well, I won't say where I am, but I'm getting distracted. That'll happen a lot too on this show. So the reason I want to, and it's, I think it's obvious, the reason I want to avoid as many proper names. I mean, you can say the president of the United States. That'll probably be less triggering than saying his name for some people. But we have to talk about, sometimes it'll be unavoidable to talk about names, but as far as when we're talking about opinions and sources, and let's try it out. And if we say a proper name or network, inevitably we'll probably be talking about specific things, and don't avoid it then. But in an attempt to not be a fence sitter, but fence sitting isn't bad. You have a pretty good view on both sides if you're sitting on top of the fence, right?
All right.
But let's say you walk up to the fence and you may be on one side of the fence. Well, just, put your chin on the fence post and pretend you're in the middle. That's probably what we're doing here, right?
This is like having to teach people how to have a conversation again.
That's a good point. Like, it's called tolerance, right? The word tolerance has kind of been absconded with, and it means something else. But tolerance means agreeing to disagree, but loving one another anyway, like agreeing to get along even though we disagree. And in the current climate, I think we're coming back to that. I think that'll be one of as we talk about the good things coming out of this.
I disagree. I'll put that out there right now.
Good.
I disagree.
Good.
I don't think we're coming back to that at all.
I think that'll be a topic that we discuss. In fact, I'll note that down.
Yes, write it down.
I will write it down.
Put the date and the time so we can refer back.
It'll be a topic for the future because I already have a list of things to talk about today, and I've already strayed from it. But
okay.
What I do want to do is, here's another comment from brother. What video quality are you streaming currently? I've had a couple of pauses for loading video. You're gonna want to avoid HD unless you have a high upload speed. All right, so.
Oh, he's gonna be your tech advisor.
Oh yeah,
That's
absolutely.
Really good.
Yeah. So he's
excellent at that. That's his forte.
Well, for your information, Phil, I just started the live stream and I'm still figuring it out. And one of the things I want to do, because YouTube has an editing portfolio or platform. Once this is all live streamed and saved on their server, then you can go in and you can add like clickable links. They have like an end card. Like when this video ends, it'll bring up a couple other videos you can watch, like previous episodes, or you can put in, a link to something else. So there's a lot of, it's a very handy tool. And I think maybe video quality during the live stream is one of the things I haven't looked into yet. So thank you for that note, Phil. All right.
So Phil's hired.
He was hired the day he was born. All right. So that'll be a third character in the show. He's
great.
He's responding again. I can't read. I'm not going to read every time he responds, but
okay. Yeah, wait until we're done.
What I want to do is we've been cutting off the show. All right, I have to look at it. Hashtag derailed. Ha ha ha. Yeah. I like this. I like the format that it's not just a dialogue with you and I, but he'll be able to say, oh, everything sucks or everything is great. All right. What I want to do is, this will be a longer conversation today. I've been keeping it to 24, 25 minutes the last 4 days, but because of the editing platform or the editing platform within YouTube, I think I can chop this video up later. I think because there's another guy that I watch and listen to, and they do a live stream and then they chop it up, and I'm pretty sure they do it within YouTube rather than having to download it, cut it up, you know,
What do you mean chop it up?
put edit marks. Basically, if say you and I talk on the phone for an hour and we talk about 4 or 5 different subjects, and there's a natural break, like, okay, now let's move on to this other subject. You can break those into separate videos that are shorter. Some people aren't going to watch an hour-long conversation.
Yeah, right.
Some people will, and then you can name those separate videos appropriately to the subject matter. Like if we talk, go ahead.
That's one thing that I thought about. You know, when it's a phone conversation like this, people tend to, they'll listen, you know, for a little bit, but if it's too long,
Yeah.
it kind of, it loses interest for them. So they go, that's boring, not going back. We don't want that to happen.
Hey, if it's longer than 10 seconds, some people will be like, nah, move on. You know. So, and that's something that's going to be built into this. If we continue doing this up front, you got to grab people's attention. Then they'll just put it on in the background and hear you laughing every now and then.
I like my laugh.
Well, I do too. And now it's recorded forever.
Yes, awesome.
Until
out into the cosmos.
Until an EMP is detonated over the country.
No. Come on, there's a black eye that's protecting us from the EMP. I do know that.
A black eye?
Yes, it's called a black eye.
Is it part of the Star Wars initiative? The Star Wars initiative or something?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. A lot of people don't realize, again, derailed. Hashtag derailed, as Phil said. But some people don't realize how much is going on behind the scenes that we don't know about, that we shouldn't know about, and that that can mean bad things and be paranoid, but I actually mean it the opposite way. I mean, we do have a lot of stuff that we do well. And, one of the examples is a lot of big businesses just voluntarily changing what they do in times of crisis. That's the hallmark. One of the hallmarks of the American way is America has a lot of people who've gotten to where they are because they had the freedom to just invent and develop and market ideas. And then when the whole country, which is also their market, right? A big business is going to want to have a large clientele to market to. But when that market is suffering, then it's in their own interest to change the way they do business to help the nation. It's in their own interest, but it's also genuinely in the interest of the country. And so, to whom much is given, much will be required, right? It's a responsibility to give back. It's a duty. People don't realize what the word duty means. As a citizen, you have a lot of rights, but you also have duties, and that's a tangent. I will we'll come back to that.
I could go off on that, but I won't. Not now.
Phil's trying to derail me.
What does that mean?
Derail, it means taking me on a tangent from what I'm intended to talk about, which is far too easy for me. I take myself on tangents and often never find my way back. But
same here.
But I can tell this will be there'll be plenty to talk about, especially if Phil keeps watching. But up front, one of the things I'm going to want to talk about up front every time we come on, and this picture, I may change out this picture. There might be a way in YouTube to digitally put the picture in the frame. I don't know, because I have this on a little stand here.
Yeah.
And I may edit it and just edit out Uncle John, unless we want to leave him in.
Yeah.
But it's Miracle Mom and Michael, not Miracle Mom and Uncle John and Michael. But for now it is. Miracle. So a line that I've been working on or thinking about is, if it weren't for a miracle, none of us would hear your voice right now. Or none of us would be hearing your voice right now. or if mom hadn't experienced an actual miracle to explain, because we're not going to talk about the miracle every time we're on the phone call, right? The thing that happened.
Right.
And so I'll have, there'll be some kind of short line to explain why you're referred to as Miracle Mom. So if it weren't for a genuine miracle, none of us would be hearing your voice right now. It has to be a short thing, but we should address it. And then, and I'm Michael. And I think it's also important that people know that you've been a medical professional your whole life. And that's relevant because this conversation will be talking about, well, what's going on in the world right now is a medical emergency, a medical crisis. And so you have specific insights that could be helpful to people. I also want to somehow work in that I work in Hollywood, or I have been working in Hollywood, and that's probably the industry that will get the least amount of help from the government. Right? It's probably, and as a result, it'll probably be the industry that is. It's like the first industry to go in a crisis. Like when your country is struggling and suffering, people don't have the money to go to movies, and now we're being told not to go to movies. That being said, more people are watching TV at home, but we're going to run out of content because you can't fly around the world and film TV shows and movies. You can't have a crew of 50 people standing around shooting scenes anymore. It's, for the time being. So there's going to come a time when there's going to be a shortage of entertainment, traditional entertainment, what we're used to, and the entertainment experience. So, that's there I went on a tangent I didn't intend to go on, but those are, because that's me, that's the business I work in or worked in. Like nobody in town is working right now. Hollywood shut down, everything shut down, but Hollywood really shut down for the first time ever. As soon as you close international flights, Hollywood shuts down. It's like, that's never happened before. So those are a couple of relevant things. Your career and my career, and how we are affected by the world that's changed. Are you still there?
Yes.
Okay. I put you to sleep. Dang. Okay, that's a good sign. That's a bad sign.
No, but you forgot. You forgot. Yesterday we left with me laughing, and it was going to be the tease.
Oh yeah.
For the next broadcast.
And it's literally at the top of my list right here. So anybody who happened to watch yesterday, which is I'm sure one or two people, it seems like. Oh, I'm reading Phil. Sorry. Phil is talking to me right now. All right. So I want to talk about the first topic, read. I don't remember if maybe I came across it in two separate places, a video and an article. So one of the things going on is the scramble for medical supplies, right? Essential medical supplies for what they're projecting is coming. And it's hitting certain places harder right now than other places. But by all the models, even the most optimistic models that were being shown, is it's going to get much, much worse in the next 2 weeks in particular. Hopefully we'll peak within the next 2 weeks. Peak meaning the daily death toll. Like there will be a peak when it averages a certain amount of deaths a day in the United States. And then that daily death toll will diminish and get smaller and smaller. But ramping up to that peak, it takes, the ventilators that are being manufactured right now probably won't be done anytime near that peak. So it's a matter of finding what we need right now, what's out there in anticipation. And a state official was trying to purchase masks, probably more than masks, but from a particular company, American company. and that state official was told no because there are foreign buyers that are willing to pay more.
Well, and what did we do? And look at what we did. You talk about idiocy. So we have China send us, I don't know how many millions of masks. And my first thought was, go ahead, be stupid. Bring those masks from China that are probably all infused with some kind of biological weapon to destroy us all. I mean, that's the insanity of this, Mike.
For those watching and listening, mom leans far to the conspiratorial.
And they're all coming true.
We all have that conspiratorial streak in us, but just because it's a conspiracy theory doesn't mean there aren't real conspiracies. So I hear what you're saying.
It's a trust issue. It's a trust issue.
Well, the facts on the ground are I'm creating a timeline. I'm getting into one of the other topics, but I'm going to create a timeline of when these things happen. For example, December 10th was the first diagnosed case in Wuhan. The first diagnosed case of this was in Wuhan, and then these other things happened. But one of the things that's coming to light right now is in January, I don't know about in late December, but in January, China started reaching out to all of their, they have businesses everywhere around the world, and they had many of their suppliers of whatever, their exporters, track down all the essential medical gear needed for this virus. And arguably, they knew it was going to get bad in their country, but they started pulling back supplies that belonged to other countries. They had started shipping, because China just has been manufacturing these things for decades and has been shipping them for decades. So that's not abnormal. We've been getting our medical supplies from China for decades. And so, but because they hadn't been truthful about how things were going, they had a lead time to start procuring and pulling back a lot of medical supplies. And all the shipments, what I heard, one of the numbers I heard is the shipments that we regularly get from China were roughly 25% lighter than usual. And I would suspect that those smaller shipments that were lighter because of the medical gear that they needed for themselves or knew would be a hot commodity around the world. And they started selling it. They'd been selling it, like they sold $500 million worth to Spain that ended up being a bunch of their products were faulty. I know you were saying maybe they'd be infused with the virus, but it's just as bad to give people false hope, thinking they're wearing a protective piece of equipment when it's not protective, and that's actually worse for somebody to go into a hotbed of viral activity thinking they have protective gear on, but don't.
So I was right.
And that's the thing, like conspiracy theories, just about any conspiracy theory it's going to start with truthful information, and it may go off in one direction or another. But getting back to this company, there's a specific company, an American company, that was not selling to the U.S. government, Florida, a state official from Florida. And so the United States, or the president, enacted the Defense Production Act. Well, he had, that's already been, I don't know the official terms, but are you familiar with that? The Defense Production Act?
Oh, yeah.
The law that was written up during the Korean War in case of emergencies. Right. It never been used until now. Well, he's been using it when needed. Like, you only use it when you need to. If there are companies that are willingly helping, then he doesn't need to use it, but this particular company was selling to the highest bidder, and everybody in the world needs these products, but it's an American company and the products are here in America and we need it. And so he used his authority, and I would say responsibly in that case. And guess what the name of the company is?
What?
It just occurred to me this morning. So you could technically call our show 3M, right? Miracle, Mom, and Michael.
And guess where 3M is?
Where?
Minnesota.
Oh my God.
Minneapolis.
All right. So
I've been there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Used to drive by it all the time.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, that's fascinating. So 3M, Miracle Mom and Michael? No. What I did here is it's not the workers, because the news report, they were interviewing, it's not the workers. They have no control over that. They're just Americans going to work and making masks and stuff. But it's the decision makers that were making the wrong decisions. And the good thing about America and Christianity, which I do want to mention, our show is Mom and I are Christians, so we come to this from a Christian perspective, is Christians forgive, right? We forgive. Like 3M should not be targeted for their bad acting. There was one bad actor, or maybe it was the board acting badly and not putting our country first, which it should be. But even though they were forced to do something that they didn't want to do, they have the opportunity to come to their senses and say they're sorry, and they'll be forgiven. And that's the beauty of America, or it was, or it should be. We forgive. Do you have any final thoughts on that topic, Mom?
Nope.
All right. We've belabored that one. We'll come back to it. I sent you an article. Do you have any thoughts on that? Moving on to.
Well, just that the person that you mentioned in that link, I see him. He's pretty frequently on the news.
Yeah, he's on he's been on most of the networks in the past. Yeah, he's a Stanford professor. Let's stay away from his name.
Well, I know who he is, and he's the voice of reason. Pretty
smart guy.
And yeah, he is. He's interesting to listen to. He's unbiased. And that's the situation we're in right now. You have to have the ability to sort out who's the voice of reason here. You've got to be able to do that.
Well, you know why this guy is particularly sharp is he's a historian.
Yeah.
What's the phrase? Those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it.
Yeah.
History repeats. And that's the fact. In fact, because of the project I've been working on, here's a little tease to my Hollywood guy side. The project I've been working on is a historical event, and my decision has been to stay as close to the actual history as possible. And as a result, in doing all this research and wandering the world with historians and into archives and finding the facts, it's uncanny how what we're going through right now is reflected in all the history. And this event, basically World War I, there's an event in World War I. It's just like parallel. It starts with disinformation. It starts with lying to the world about what's going on in your own country, and then a lot of people dying. It's like history repeats. So that's why I kind of have a bias toward historians. Of course, there are plenty of bad historians, but when they have consensus, I don't just listen to one historian. I have consulted multiple historians in my project, and this guy has a good reputation.
Oh, yeah.
And the gist of that article, what was he talking about? Do you remember the gist of the article?
You're talking to, now remember, you're talking to a 75-year-old woman who can't remember what she had for breakfast 3 hours ago. So.
Fair enough.
Do you get it?
I get it. Hey.
I read it, I understood it, it was clear and all that, but don't ask me to repeat it.
All right. So next time I send you an article, I'll say, take notes. Take some notes to repeat in the phone call.
All right.
I don't remember. I think it was.
I'll pick out keywords.
There you go.
And jot them down.
If I recall, because I read it and then sent it to you.
Yeah.
It's essentially, we are in a position right now where the world is going to follow America's lead, because, and this is, I mean, fact of the matter is, intentional or not, the world just got struck by a biological weapon. The entire world just got struck by a biological weapon, and whether it was intentional or not, that's a fact. It's like a bomb going off somewhere around the world, and it doesn't matter if it was an accident or intentional, it affects us all. You know, if it's a nuclear bomb, it could throw radiation into the atmosphere, but it could get caught by the winds and carried to other countries, innocent countries. Think of Chernobyl. That's how I heard somebody refer to this as the biological equivalent of Chernobyl, except Chernobyl is a localized event and this is a globalized event. And so the world changes when something like this happens. And the fact that we weren't notified immediately, that's worse. That's equivalent to this being done intentionally. So if the virus wasn't released intentionally, if you go ultra conspiratorial, then it was intentional. But even if it wasn't intentional, the fact that the truth about the virus was covered up is as bad as doing it intentionally, because this could have been contained. 95% of the deaths that will occur could have been prevented if the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, had not covered it up and used.
Let me interrupt you.
Go ahead.
Let me be rude and interrupt you. Because if the world is going to follow America's lead, then that begs the question, whose lead is America going to follow? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And being Christians.
Is that what you're getting at?
Well, yeah, that's the whole point.
It is.
Whose lead will America follow? You cannot serve two masters.
I don't need any more hints. I know who you're talking about.
Okay. I'm just throwing that in there.
No, and that is exactly the point. And you know, there's this other historian that I am a fan of, and he actually has a radio show, or had a radio show that I used to listen to. But he's a writer, and he wrote a book recently about the miracle of America. And he as a historian, he notes events that are inexplicable that led to just amazing discoveries or exceptionalism. But if you know anything about history, there's never been a country anything like America. The advancements that we have technologically and socially and globally and agriculturally and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All the advancements are spurred, are generated, not all of them, but it's been the U.S. engine of innovation and ingenuity that have made the world a better and better and better place. The fact of the matter is, the poorest person in America has access to better dental care than Rockefeller did 100 years ago. It's like, it's all a matter of perspective. The world is in a better shape now than it's ever been in before because of America. And now those lines are becoming very, very clear. There are different political systems and ideologies and beliefs when devastation is imminent. So we'll move on from that topic. unless you have any final thoughts.
No, I'm done on that one.
I just want to. How long are we? Okay, we're going well. I have two more quick things to talk about. So I got kids in the house. I got 3 kids in the house. I have an 18-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a 12-year-old. And
My grandchildren.
yes, and they're loving the extended spring break. And I told them, you're not going back to school the rest of this year. I don't know about September, but you're not going back to school the rest of this year. And
They said,
it goes in one ear and out the other, because the official line from the school is, we're going to try and come back to school on May 3rd or whatever. That was the official line. And that's understandable. Initially, they said, it's going to be a 3-week spring break. That was the first thing they said. I'm like, that's not going to happen. And then they extended it to May, because nobody knows, the official line. They can't overreact. I mean, overreaction is good if you're an individual and you just want to stock up on stuff. But if you're a school system, a government institution, you don't overreact. You don't want to destroy the system. But when you're getting information from, more reliable information, then we change things. It's like pushing the date from Easter. We want to open the country on Easter. Well, let's try the end of April. Well, it's going to keep changing as more information comes in. If we had been getting information from the CCP as far back as December, when it was discovered, we wouldn't be in this boat right now. We would already know. But I told
isn't one of yours supposed to graduate this year?
Yes, but she was already finishing her senior year online. So she got a jump start. Like all of the kids at the school where she used to go have suddenly joined her in the online, schooling world. So she had an advantage. She only had like 2 classes to finish for her senior year. So it didn't make sense for her to keep going to the school she was going to. And so she's been used to being home, except she doesn't like being home. She likes hanging out with her friends. And that's an issue for her. Actually, it's an issue for all of them, except my youngest. She's a not a homebody, but she keeps to herself. She likes to read books and
she likes the nest.
Yeah. So they're all handling it differently, but I've given them a couple tasks. They have been on break for 3 weeks, and their school took that time to figure out how to do the online school and get all their curriculums ready. All the teachers have probably been working very hard to reformat their curriculum so that they can present it here on the web. And so that starts Monday. So they go back to school on Monday. But in the meantime, I've given them some tasks. I'm actually, with the younger 2, have been reading some history. The book of the Gospel of John and the book of Genesis. I've never really sat down and just read through the Bible or parts of the Bible with them. So that's kind of an education they're getting. And then I've had them track the daily updates on the virus totals. So each of them, the 2 younger ones, have an assignment. One of them does all the states' cases, diagnosed, and deaths. So each state, we started when there was still one state with 0 cases. West Virginia was the last state to have 0 cases, and that's the day we started this. And then so they've been tracking it, and there's a graph of the cases in the United States and the deaths in the United States. And then the other one tracks certain countries around the world. I have them tracking like China and England and random countries like Serbia or Denmark, Iran, France, Italy, Spain. So I have they're tracking the virus each day. And every now and then one of them goes, "Oh my gosh." Like the other day, my son, my middle child, he goes, "We hit 1 million. There's 1 million cases in the world." So for them to watch it live, basically, most of us live our lives being entertained, watching movies and listening to music and doing what we want and not paying attention to what's going on in the world. And something as simple as updating data every day keeps them tied to what's really going on in the world. Another thing I'm going to draw up for them is a timeline, because there are significant events happening, and when people don't understand the sequence of events, they tend to forget who's responsible for this. So,
well, what I like about this whole school shutdown, all the way up through the universities, is the fact that our kids are no longer being indoctrinated in all this Marxist ideology. That's what I like.
Well, there's still plenty of that.
Well, there's plenty of that.
That'll still happen.
They're not being spoon-fed it through the school system. That's what I like.
Well, that is still going to happen, but it will diminish. And what I like is the coming change in the education system as a result. People are start realizing, oh, I didn't need, maybe I already said this before, but I didn't need to send my kid away to that brick and mortar structure for $200,000 just to have the name of the university. Oh, they could have got the exact same education, knowledge, and information sitting at home, or sitting anywhere in an internet cafe, getting educated. So it's going to basically restructure the education industry, because it's an industry. You don't raise tuitions every year because you need it for books. It's people taking that money. And anyway, you get me on a soapbox, but that's one of the painfully good outcomes. It's going to be very painful for a lot of people that get their livelihood from a paycheck from a university. But that's all. When your economy is nosediving, those kinds of things, like the entertainment industry, those kinds of luxuries tend to be put in perspective. Correct. You can interrupt me anytime. Don't feel like you're being rude.
It looks like I'll have to.
The beauty is when I cut this up, I can cut out those long pauses and move on to the next topic. So, next topic, final topic, and this is just something at the end, after I talk about this, I'm going to read through all of Phil's messages here. He's stayed with us. We haven't lost him yet. He does have feedback, and I won't.
Good.
All right. So this is something that happened to me yesterday, and I want this. If anybody ever listens to this, if anybody ever becomes a follower or a subscriber of this podcast, so subscribe. There's the pitch. Like, you and I are going to have to subscribe, and you'll get notifications. It's going to be every day at 9 a.m. Right? There's the little commercial for our conversation.
I'm posting every one of these on my Facebook page.
Oh, great.
Good feedback. So.
All right. I want people to take away from this hope, especially in a time like this. Some people, their lives didn't change much when this happened. And I think you and I are a perfect contrast. Your life didn't change much at all. You've been retired for years now, and you're comfortable in your self-sequestration.
Yes.
Whereas me, I can't pay my rent next month, and my kids, et cetera, their music lessons stopped, and their sporting events stopped, and some people's lives have dramatically changed, and worse, some people were just launching a business, or just about to get married, or just about to move, or and some people are trapped in relationships or environments that is like the worst case scenario for them. And so in talking about hope, I don't want to overlook those who are in desperate circumstances, like severe circumstances. If anybody who's out there who might happen to come across this video, if you're trapped, there's hope. There are people who will help you find a a charitable organization that's giving out food and ask them for help. Like if you are stuck with someone that you don't want to be with, that you don't want to be around, that is oppressing you or manipulating you, there is hope. There is a way out. There are churches, there are even non-affiliated not non-religious groups, there are charities, there are people out there who will help you, especially in this time. And the reason I'm bringing all this up is yesterday I was out. I try to take a daily walk, and it's getting a little crazy because you can't even walk down the sidewalk anymore. Like you're not supposed to be within 6 feet of other people, and sidewalks are not 6 feet wide, most of them. And so you ultimately you look ahead and see somebody coming, and you step out into the street or they step out into the street or whatever. And so I was out walking yesterday, and there was a couple coming toward me, and I stepped out into the street and I went around this car as they walked past on the sidewalk, and I just glanced over as they were passing, and the woman, the girl, they might have been in their 20s. I caught her gaze, and she was staring straight at me, like her eyes were like piercing, and she passed, and I walked along for half a block thinking about what I saw in her eyes, and so that's the conclusion I came to after, again, half a block. And I thought, your imagination and that conspiratorial side of us, I thought, is this woman with a guy who's forcing her to live a certain way against her will, whether it's he's just ignoring all the cautions to shelter in place, but I can't speak up because that's not our relationship. There's plenty of relationships like that where there's an oppressive lead role in the relationship.
Yeah.
And then there's also those, one of the things that grieves me the most is abduction, child abduction or sex trafficking and those things. And so all of these thoughts went through my head as I'm walking. And so I turned around and just started walking back, and they were out of sight. They had turned a corner, and I kept walking, and I lost track of them and lost sight of them. And all I could think to do was just pray for her. Because I may have totally misinterpreted her. Like, again, it was just a look, and I was struck that she was pierced, like she had a piercing gaze straight at me. And I had walked past a car, and I was kind of behind them, and she had turned her head enough. And so I just offered a prayer that she would, if she was in some kind of felt trapped, that God would guide her.
Like
Go ahead.
Her gaze was almost a cry for help.
Well, that's that's one interpretation, and I don't know if that's the correct one, and I will never know. But it made me think that there are a lot of people that this crisis has trapped them in circumstances. Some people may have been just trying to break up with their significant other, and now they're trapped in an apartment with them.
Yeah.
So
think about children.
Right. So just because your life hasn't changed much, and mine's changed dramatically, some people's lives have changed in a very, very, very bad way. And we should be focused on those people rather than, am I going to get a paycheck next month? You know what? The government's trying to help with that. There are other people that have worse circumstances. So,
yes.
There's hope, though. We're going to come out of this, and like in I'd say at least, well, I don't want to put time frames on this because nobody really knows. There's the optimistic time frame is a couple months. The pessimistic time frame is 2 years. But at the very least, our economy has taken a huge hit that won't be like, as far as going back to normal and going out to movies and stuff, that's like the 3 months to 2 years prognosis. But as far as the economy itself, I don't know how long it'll take to recover. It could get really, really bad for a long time, or it could get bad for a couple of years and then just grow like crazy, which it will. Like, well, I won't beat that horse. America will rise above every adversity. And that's my opinion. Now, let me read through what all of Phil's notes to us. So he should be warned not to write anything that he doesn't want me to read out loud. If I see something that shouldn't be. All right. So he started out, there's no times on these, but it's from the beginning to the end. And it's, about 10 different texts. Ha ha ha. Apparently free advertising for PBS. Feedback. What video quality? I already read that. Derail. Hashtag derailed. Haha. What about when big business prevents new development by copyright lawsuits? Oh, that's a good topic, because litigation has not stopped. There's crazy stuff going on in the courts right now that it's going to have to get under control, because all of the nature of our culture has become a litigious society where, the ambulance chasers, that trope, there are so many things to sue over that end up shutting down business, or big businesses hiring staffs and teams of lawyers. Well, when you're in a war footing, which we essentially are, the justice system has a whole different way of dealing with things. So we're not going to solve every problem in this podcast, and then Phil is laughing. Ha ha ha. Welcome to live chat, bro. He's making fun of me because he's more familiar with this format. Oh, and then he asks, is the virus the topic to stay on? Is the virus the topic to stay on? Ask every news organization. It's what's happening, and it's what people, there's fear mongering, and then there's hope disseminating. And I want to be on the side of hope disseminating. I know early on in a group text with you and him and Michelle, I was just spouting numbers that I was hearing, and since you can't really detect a tone in a text, it comes across as fear mongering. And that's the last thing I want to do is to fear monger. But the cultures change. It happens. Cultures change dramatically sometimes. And what happened to us was a biological attack. Is the virus the topic to stay on, or maybe reminiscent bias to the trade war from Trump? Not sure what that. I mean, I can go off on that topic, the trade war. Like, maybe he's saying, no, I won't speculate. Feedback. You guys drifted off on a topic about an unnamed article in person. No clue what you're talking about. Yeah, well, by design. No, we talked about something. I'll separate these out. It'll be hard. Some people won't know, why are you drifting from topic to topic? If you listen to the whole thing, it's just a conversation that happens in conversations. But I'll break these up into semi-coherent blocks, maybe. Okay. What do you think about the infection rate between New York and California? Oh, okay, this is good. New York has 100,000 cases. California has 10,000 cases. And I've been saying this, I think California will end up, when this is done, when the numbers stop, when the deaths stop and the cases stop, I think California will either be number 1 or number 2. Because California has like 11% of the country's population. It's just statistically, it's just gonna happen. California, I think, that's my prediction. I'm not claiming to be a prophet of any sort, but I think California will be number 1 or number 2. If California is number 2, New York will stay number 1. That's because, New York is the most concentrated number of people in a small area. Los Angeles is a concentrated number of people in a large area, and this whole virus is transmitted by close proximity. But because of, we have a San Francisco and Los Angeles and San Diego, we have several large cities, so that's going to happen there. but due to our sheer numbers, I think California will ultimately end up higher than most other states, if not all other states. So that's my expectation. That's just my gut instinct. It hit New York fast because it hit there early. California, actually, it hit San Francisco early as well. And San Francisco was the first one to shut down, or California was the first state to shut down counties. We shut down 6 counties in the Bay Area. We were the first ones to shut down counties. And then, it spread across the country. And here's Phil's final note before we hang up. Both were infected at the same time. Do you think California flattened the curve better? That's what people are saying. And because we reacted early, yes, I think California, to answer that question, I think California did react sooner than New York. And because of that, we started flattening the curve. But it's still a curve that's on an upward trajectory. So in California, instead of it going like this, like New York is, it's going like this, but it's still going up. And as the kids are tracking the numbers, California it's still on an incline. And whenever that incline stops, because of our sheer numbers, 35 million people or 40 million people in California, it's just because of the numbers per capita. Okay. So when people are bandying numbers about, it's like, the United States now has the most cases. Now it's the central hub for this thing. Well, per capita, it's not. There are other countries per capita. That's per people in the population. If you just take total numbers, you can't compare the U.S. population to Italy's population. They have way, way fewer people than we do. And so they have, so the per capita number is the one to talk about. And so since California per capita has way more people, those numbers will go higher, even though maybe the percentage of Californians that have it will be lower than the percentage of New Yorkers. There will still be more potentially in California simply because there's more people. Phil says, I don't think California hospitals will be in the same crisis as New York based on what your state did, however. Well, I have a personal insight. I have a friend, a screenwriter friend of mine. He's one of my best friends. His wife is a nurse. And I texted him yesterday. I said, how are you guys doing? He said, she's working. They're not taking any patients other than COVID-19 patients, literally. And this is like, I don't know if she's at UCLA or she's at one of the big hospitals. And she said, she said, they're not taking any patients other than COVID-19 patients. He said, it's still slow.
Yeah.
But for a hospital not to take any patients other than COVID-19 patients, that's huge. So they're ready.
Well, they have to take, life and death emergency.
The emergency rooms, yes. But there's plenty of elective surgeries or things that can be, they're putting everything off that they can. Well, let's hear from you, Mom. What do you say? In that case.
Say that again?
Well, you're the nurse, so tell me what they're doing.
And they're doing whatever they believe they need to do to survive as a business, for one thing.
But the hospital hears from the government, right? I guess.
Yeah. Governor Newsom, as far as I know, hasn't given a whole lot of public briefing on their hospital situation. So it's hard to know. That nurse friend of yours is speaking from her work site, so she knows. The
front line.
And you sort of have to assume that it's the same way in other hospitals, but nobody's talking about that in California.
Right. What the news media tends to do is find the worst case scenarios and put that on, and then people
sensational.
Right. It's sensational and
those ratings.
And so, your general populace might get the impression that that's happening everywhere. Well, it's not. The United States is going to handle this. We're going to handle it fine. It's just one of the things that's being exposed is poorly run hospitals as well. Like there have been requests for ventilators going back 20 years, like requests, like recommended and suggested by the CDC decades ago that keep being turned down, keep budget cuts. What can we cut out of this budget that's not essential? Oh, the 1,000 ventilators that were ordered or that have been ordered. That's what's being exposed. A lot of mishandling in our medical system, but because the people themselves are on it, or in crisis, people rally together. And so it's no time to cast blame. Who didn't order enough ventilators? It's like, now is time to bind together. And on that note, we should end this. Oh my gosh, we did an hour. All right.
Wow. Good. Okay.
Uh-oh. Phil has one last note. Mom, I've got the bronchitis. What do I do? You better call Phil. All right.
Come and visit me.
All right. Love you, Mom. Love you, Phil.
Love you too.
Talk to you Monday.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.